Fees Amendment Order 2024.
I call the Minister to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Betts. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship today, and I beg to move that the committee has considered the Immigration and Nationality Fees Amendment Order 2024. The order we are debating today introduces a power to charge a fee for UK visa qualification equivalency and English language proficiency assessment services, and sets the maximum fee that can be charged. Now, before I explain what these services are, I will provide the committee with some background on the Home Office's fee structure. In order for the Home Office to charge for immigration and nationality functions, the Immigration Act 2014 requires that fees must be set in secondary legislation. The Immigration and Nationality Fees Order 2016, an amendment to which we are discussing today, sets out the functions for which a fee can be charged and sets the maximum fee that can be charged. Fee levels are then set in separate secondary legislation, the Immigration and Nationality Fees Regulation 2018, which is subject to parliamentary agreement through the negative procedure. Now, turning to the fees for the services we are seeking to regulate, these are for assessments used on certain visa and nationality routes, which include family, skilled worker, settlement and student, where the requirements of that route require an applicant to demonstrate proficiency in English language at a specified level or demonstrate that they have gained a qualification that is equivalent to one obtained in the UK. There are a number of ways in which an applicant can demonstrate their proficiency of English language, one of which is to use an academic qualification obtained in English and awarded by an educational establishment outside the UK. Now, where an applicant is seeking to demonstrate that they have gained a qualification that is equivalent to one obtained in the UK, or their proficiency in English language by using an academic qualification obtained outside of the UK, these must be provided by ECTIS Limited. ECTIS Limited are a third-party supplier who provide these services through a concession contract with the Home Office and have been providing these services for over a decade. This is not a new requirement being introduced for applicants on work, study and nationality routes. The requirement for applicants to use these services has been specified in the immigration rules since 2008. Where a visa or nationality applicant uses the services provided by ECTIS, they apply through their website and pay the appropriate fee. The outcome of the assessment can take in the region of 10 working days for the English language assessment, unless the applicant opts for an optional fast-track service and around 30 working days for the qualification equivalency assessment. The use of this assessment is not limited to the Home Office and the visa application. The maximum fee we are setting in this order for the qualification equivalency and English language proficiency assessment is being set at £400. This will allow the Home Office to set fee levels later this year at their current levels, which are £140 for the English language assessment and £210 for the qualification equivalency assessment. By setting the maxima above this level, we have a reasonable degree of headroom to adjust fees if, for instance, there is an increase in the cost of providing these services. I will turn now to the question of why the Home Office is bringing forward legislation to regulate these fees now, when they are already being charged and where neither the nature of the service itself or requirements in the immigration rules have changed. This is due to the Department identifying, in the course of preparing for a reprocurement of the existing service earlier this year, that these fees should have already been regulated due to the requirement to use the service in respect of applications on certain routes. Having identified this, the Department has now sought to legislate at the earliest opportunity, which had originally been considered for the summer, but which was postponed due to the general election, and which is why we are working now to ensure that these fees have an appropriate statutory footing going forward. Honorary members will be aware that the Secondary Legislation Scrutiny Committee drew special attention to the explanatory memorandum that was published alongside this order. In their report, published on the 10th of October, the committee raised concerns that the explanatory memorandum did not provide a clear and open statement of why this instrument was brought forward. I fully appreciate the importance of transparency in the department's interactions with Parliament, including in the explanatory memoranda that it lays alongside legislation. I recognise the committee's view that a fuller explanation of the context of the legislation and the associated issue was required in this case, including the status of and approach to fees charged prior to the appropriate regulations being brought into force. As I set out in my response to the correspondence from the committee on the 15th of October, in which I responded in some detail, and some of which we are covering in my speech today also, the speech of those previously charged fees is also subject to a range of complex and ongoing considerations, which makes the position fundamentally uncertain at this stage. It includes exploration of the possibility of pursuing retrospective legislation that would put fees paid to date on a statutory footing. On this issue, whilst I'm not yet in a position to confirm the specific approach to being taken, the options under consideration have the potential to fundamentally impact the bearing of those previously charged fees. And given this uncertainty, I did not consider that it would be appropriate or helpful to go into further detail on this point in the explanatory memorandum, which is otherwise clear on the necessity of laying legislation to put these fees on a statutory footing and the rationale for the specific provisions being made. I will, however, emphasise again that I take the Department's responsibilities in respect of parliamentary transparency seriously, and I would like to assure honourable members that you are taking forward these considerations in respect of previously charged fees as a priority. It is also important to note that all fees that were paid were in receipt of services that were also received. Finally, I would like to be clear that whilst the purpose of this order is to put these fees on a statutory footing, it is the first of two statutory instruments that need to be laid in order to ensure that future fees are charged for these services with the appropriate legislation in place. Our intention is, subject to the approval of this order by the House, to lay an amendment to the Immigration and Nationality Fees Regulations in December that will set fee levels. Thank you.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft Immigration and Nationality Fees Amendment Order 2024. Call the opposition spokesperson for purpose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Betts, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Can I just welcome the Minister to her place? And I think she'll be delighted to know that we do not see these as contentious measures, and we will not be seeking to divide the committee today. But I accept, and this side of the House accepts her reasons for outlining the reasons why we've had to make these changes today. And we also accept that there will need to be some kind of retrospective legislation. So I welcome her transparency on that matter. Mr. Betts, we always accept on this side that immigration must be pragmatic and that regulations that come forward in terms of our immigration system must be pragmatic as well. So as I say, we welcome the measures today. Can I just ask the Minister, going forward, what mechanisms will be put in place for the proper scrutiny of these statutory instruments, but further regulations and retrospective legislation she may bring forward, whether she will be able to say what mechanisms this House will have to scrutinise those? And can she outline, and we accept that at this stage she may not know because of parliamentary timetabling, but can we also ask her when we might expect the government to bring forward the retrospective legislation that may be needed to amend some of the issues that she's outlined this morning? And may I, Mr. Betts, also say that Ministers should be assured, of course, that we will always, as an opposition, look carefully at further proposals that the Minister may bring to this House. And I would also question whether it's government policy to reverse or change the exemptions introduced by the previous government, which have ensured that 300,000 fewer people, would-be applicants, would have come to this country with other routes into this country. Can I ask whether the new government intends to make further changes within that scope? And furthermore, I am concerned, even though it's not necessarily within the scope of this SI, that ministers have publicly stated their intent to maintain an open door policy for international students. Will she be able to outline the government's position on international students going forwards? But Mr. Betts, as I say this morning, these are pragmatic measures that we welcome as an opposition, and we look forward to supporting them in this session. Thank you.
Right. No other members seeking to catch my eye. Minister to respond.
I thank the Shadow Minister for his response. There are a number of questions which it may be more helpful for me to come back to him in writing on, and I do thank him for his constructive and response, in that this has been an issue that also predates the general election, and it is an important matter on which, for clarity, we do move forward in the way that has been proposed. It is important to also say that, as I have outlined, sorry, I might just need a water. As I have outlined, we are still considering the best approach to take in relation to legislation or other responses to the issue retrospectively. And I'd be very happy to keep the Shadow Minister informed of that, and as a result it's a little bit more challenging to announce a timetable for legislation when there is still some important process to go through, and happy to keep him informed on that in writing if need be. Also, it is probably worth saying a couple of points in response, however, Mr. Betts, which is that over the lifespan of this order, immigration fees will be kept under review and will also be updated within the parameters that we have set. And in the event that fee levels are changed, they will also need to be approved by this House and will be accompanied by an economic assessment. And it is just, I think, helpful to remind that this order will not in itself put fees for these services on a statutory footing. It is the first of two pieces of secondary legislation that is required, and the second being that amendment to the Immigration and Nationality fees regulations that we expect to lay in December, subject to Parliament approving this order. And the regulations will set the fees for immigration and nationality related services provided by ECTIS at the level that customers are currently charged. Thank you.
The question is, the committee has considered the draft Immigration and Nationality Fees Amendment Order 2024. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. That brings our proceedings to